Hi, I'm Rick Reef, and welcome to SoCal Insider. Well, voters in San Bernardino decided they're fed up and they aren't going to take it anymore. So they've recalled or otherwise ousted several powerful city leaders. Is this a first step to getting the bankrupt city back on track? LA Mayor Eric Garcetti says he wants to restore some of the city's boulevards. Will his plan for great streets mean fewer potholes? And why do Californians give the governor a thumbs up, but many of his key policies a thumbs down? We'll explore all that, but first, political corruption in the Southland. The headlines are endless. The investigations seem to be everywhere. Indictments, plea bargains, trials, the list goes on. Are we cleaning house or just rotating rascals? Well, joining me to discuss, Frank Stoltze, political reporter for public radio station KPCC. Lindsey Mastis, Los Angeles-based reporter for Feature Story News. And my own star reporter, David Nazar. Welcome back, everyone.
Good to be here.
Frank, we have a lot of ground to cover. What better place to start than Moreno Valley, that community in Riverside County near the city of San Bernardino? We've got like the biggest sting ever, or I mean the biggest amount of money. Tell us about this.
Yeah, of these various cases, this is the best one because FBI agents went undercover and posed as developers who were buying a piece of land from Councilman Marcelo Coe, and in kind of a complicated deal, they paid him off $2.3 million in exchange for his promises that he would vote for them on land use issues and other issues when they developed the property. But the real great part of it was this $2.3 million in cash, stacks and stacks of $100 bills that they had stacked on the table and pushed toward him in this sting operation. And they have this great photo of him with his hands behind his head, sort of leaning back, looking at the cash in a very satisfied way.
Now, was this pre-sequester or what? I mean, where did they come up with $2 million? Was it all real money, or did they have some funny money in between or something? Or?
You know, they said it was real money.
Wow.
And,
I mean, this is like a movie. This is like a Brad Pitt film or something.
And one of the prosecutors even described it as almost watching like a reality television. Yeah. And they were even surprised. You know, prosecutors love to tout, getting the bad guys and the cases, that they accomplish, the people they bust. But they were genuinely surprised and shocked that he was taking this much money in this fashion in such a blatant manner.
Now, is this the end of this one, or is there more coming? Because after all, I mean, it's outrageous and everything, but if all you're doing is setting a guy up, and not entrapping, but, setting somebody up, is there more going on in Moreno Valley?
It's interesting you bring up the entrapment and sting question because, a lot of times people will say, well, I was stung, it was an entrapment. In this case, he pleaded guilty, so he knew they had the goods on him. This is what some think is the tip of an iceberg in Moreno Valley. The Riverside County District Attorney, Paul Zellerbach, is looking into Moreno Valley and other officials. They've subpoenaed a bunch of records out there. And in fact, the Riverside DA and the FBI have a joint corruption task force operating not just in Moreno Valley, but throughout Riverside. And they'll never say we have more indictments or arrests coming down the pike, but they sure hinted that way.
David, controversy with a developer, that seems to strike a chord.
Well, the interesting thing, Frank just mentioned Paul Zellerbach, the Riverside DA, and I asked my contact over there, how did Paul even get wind of this? Right when he took office a few years ago, he formed the task force you just mentioned. He felt there was some funny money or some shenanigans going on with the city council or developers. The way these things really evolve, and you guys will probably be a testament to this, you get these activists who form these advocacy groups. They go to city council meetings, they go to county commissioner meetings, they listen to the supervisors, and there are red flags like we want to change the zoning, we want to rezone something, we want to build a development here. I used to always say these folks are NIMBYs years ago when I covered these, not in my backyard. But these are the same folks who now know what is going on. They are the gadflies of city council meetings. They call out city leaders on this. They call reporters. We investigate and we find out there is stuff going on. But really the interesting thing here, guys, is that it would make news if these city officials were not corrupt. It seems across this board, someone somewhere is doing a quid pro quo or working with a developer or taking something. I mean, there's a lot of folks getting their wheels greased. We just did a story in Cyprus very similar. There was a piece of land that sat there for 3 decades. It was owned by a developer in Cyprus. Well, all of a sudden they changed the zoning and rezoned it commercial, industrial. Then they told the folks they were going to build a senior facility. They wound up wanting to build a truck depot warehouse. The guy sold the land for $33 million. Now the residents say they were duped, but they formed this advocacy group. They're fighting back. This is what the citizens have to do. After Bell, we're beginning to pay attention. Don't you agree?
Well, Lindsey, I'd like to ask you: are we seeing, the citizens take some of these small communities back?
You know, we're seeing that in some of the communities, but you really have to think about if you're a citizen of a community and you hear that someone who's supposed to represent you has taken such a huge bribe. I would wonder, have they done it before? And what else has happened? This is just what the FBI has been able to uncover. What has been going on up until now?
Yeah. Yeah, Frank, let's move on to San Gabriel Valley. All right, that's one. San Gabriel Valley, and in particular the town of Montebello, which is just outside of LA, and we have something going on now involving a very powerful politician from one of the most powerful political families. What's the latest?
Well, okay, so we had the FBI posing as developers over in Moreno Valley. In this case, according to an FBI affidavit obtained by Al Jazeera, by the way, FBI was posing as film producers that approached State Senator Ron Calderon. This is the big Ron Calderon case involving the 3 brothers, but the FBI is just at this point looking into Ron Calderon, the state senator. And according to the affidavit, the FBI undercover agents were going to offer him bribes in exchange for tax credit legislation that would favor the film industry. And these guys, as I said, are posing as film producers. That affidavit was revealed a couple weeks ago. Then just this week, we have 15 local elected officials, mayors, city council people, members of school boards who have long sort of bowed down to the power of the Calderon family, standing up and saying it's time for Ron Calderon to resign. He has not been charged. He has said he is not guilty. He has done nothing wrong, but the heat is definitely get turned up.
Yeah,
on,
we also
on
have some affidavits of other alleged bribe taking, right?
Yeah, we do. And as I say, I mean, we may be seeing the end of a bit of a dynasty, because you had the 3 brothers who all served in the state legislature. Now one of the sons is in the state legislature, and this is what the FBI has said is a wide-ranging investigation. They don't name names, but they've got a big investigation going on.
Yeah. David, any thoughts on this?
Simply that these Calderon brothers, when you mention dynasty, the first thing is you're thinking of the Kennedy dynasty, the Bush dynasty, and you've got the Calderons, which has sort of cornered the Montebello market. I mean, this is a town of 60,000 people, and they've got a stranglehold on this city. I mean, it's crazy.
I even had a mayor who said that Ron Calderon told him, hey, we are the Kennedys of East LA and Southeast LA, so you need to understand that. Wow. And this is what one mayor told me that Ron Calderon told him.
And of course, in the city of Bell, we've had the trial going on now. And of course, this is where the city manager, gave himself millions, a salary of millions. And we've had some interesting testimony in the last few weeks in the city of Bell.
One of the most surprising things about Bell, if you remember a year ago, the police chief would not testify, or when he did testify, I think they said about 20 times or so, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right. Well, now he's testifying. Now he's talking. Now he's saying, look, I didn't think that they could afford me, but
yeah, wasn't that amazing? I don't know why they were paying me $500,000, whether they could afford it, but they did. There's a lawman for you.
Well, it really makes you question him, because anyone who hears that, they'll say, well, why did they pick you? Why did they say, we want to pay you almost $500,000 over anyone else? So him saying, look, they wanted to pay me this much, that's sort of a hard argument for especially voters and for especially people who live in Bell to just accept.
You know what strikes me, Frank, is the casual attitude of these officials as they're testifying, and how they're talking about how they were, concocting plans to boost themselves into the, upper $1 million category, and how to hide it. And it's almost a sense of entitlement, like there's no public service aspect at all. It's just how much money can we give ourselves?
Well, and the real danger is a growing cynicism by voters toward elected officials and toward government in general. You have the federal government shut down, you have these corruption cases, you have a lot of people losing faith in government. I should say, there are plenty of great elected officials. You've met a bunch. I know many who do wonderful work. But these kind of cases really sort of hurt faith in democracy in some sense.
Were you saying that one of the, before the show, that one of the officials at this press conference you're at was Cristina Garcia?
She is the first state legislator to call on Calderon to resign. Yeah. And of course, Senate leaders have stripped him of the very powerful position of chairman of the Insurance Committee. He's been stripped of all of his other committee assignments. And again, he has said, I've done nothing wrong. But what came out in that FBI affidavit was
well, the reason I asked about Cristina, to get back to David's point maybe about the NIMBYs and stuff, that maybe we're seeing the revenge of the nerds now. I mean, Cristina Garcia got elected as an activist who was really pushing the city of Bell. I mean, it was sort of the corruption in the city of Bell that got her elected to the legislature, and now she's stepping out and calling on Ron Calderon to resign. So maybe there is some house cleaning going on here.
Well, there's no doubt, and it's particularly out in San Bernardino, of course, where they're recalling people for folks who haven't necessarily been guilty of corruption, but have certainly been guilty of leading a city that went into bankruptcy.
Well, let's talk about San Bernardino, because there we've had both county and city officials copping a plea here and there, getting indicted here and there. We won't get into those details because we've been talking about big money today, so we'll save that for later. But David, in San Bernardino, one of the bankrupt cities of California, there are bankruptcies being watched around the country because it could have profound ramifications for how cities work out their pension obligations, pay off bondholders, and things like that. They just had a recall. Tell us about it.
Well, as the panel and you will attest to, San Bernardino is an interesting city. You kind of have to understand a little bit of the history to understand how the recall folks got there. This is a city that in the 50s was booming and folks were going there by leaps and bounds. Then the gangs in LA started to move into San Bernardino in the 80s and 90s. The crime rate soared, the housing prices plummeted, the areas were blighted, the neighborhoods were in terrible disrepair. No city leader would take the bull by the horn and be proactive and say, let's revitalize downtown, let's put money into it. They let all the auto dealerships leave. So you have a city that was turning into a very poor city. Combine that with the recession, add to that the fact that the mayors were always battling the fire unions and the police unions with these unfunded liabilities and the pensions, and look what you've got. You've got a mess. Well, what happens? The residents are irate. They're saying that's not an excuse. This was poor city leadership. All of the city leaders in the last couple of decades were self-interested. They neglected the businesses. They neglected the neighbors. And the key person involved with this, so we're going to see a photo of him, James Penman, the city attorney, Frank, I know you know all too well, of in office 27 years there. They could not get him out. He had a very adversarial role. He would continually fight with the mayors, continually fight with other city leaders. It was his way or the highway. The entire council was discombobulated. They got nothing done. The residents said, we have had it. Thus, they had the largest recall in a municipality in the history of California. These recall folks spent over $200,000. Can you imagine over 200 grand to get, I believe, 9 folks out of office? And the entire recall was something like $500,000 because the city leaders were fighting it and saying, we're not leaving. Well, you know what? They are leaving, and it is a mess. The new city manager, Mr. Sines, city attorney, I should say, says it's not going to be party politics. I'm going to work to get us out of bankruptcy, fix the pensions, and bam, I'm back into private practice. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, this is, he was not just any city attorney, this guy.
Yeah. City Attorney Penman, or I guess now former City Attorney Penman, typically the city attorney is sober and offers legal opinions, and isn't particularly political. In this case, Penman perhaps for a long time was the most powerful man in San Bernardino. As city attorney, he would offer political opinions, he would orchestrate political maneuvers at city council, and so many blamed him for the state San Bernardino was in.
Now that sometimes, the dog that catches the bus, what are they going to do? Now that it seems like these citizens, they recalled 2 people, others decided they weren't going to run. One, I think, pled guilty to something, and so he's off the council. So one way or another, it's like 7 out of the 9 positions are now new. They're new people, or they're going to have a runoff. Is this going to change the culture in San Bernardino, and is it hopeful that this city can right itself?
Boy, they have serious problems. So whoever gets in there faces these serious budgetary problems. The 2 people in the runoff for mayor, one of them is a councilwoman who's recalled from her council seat in one of the wards, but citywide she got the most votes in the mayor's race and is in this runoff. So people seem to have some mixed feelings about her, and the person opposing her is an accountant who's saying, look, what we need is somebody like me to get in there and fix
that's
the
interesting.
vote.
She was one of the old guard that they recalled, but she was she was running for the mayor's slot, and she was the second highest vote getter, although at 25%. That it might be a hurdle, right?
Yeah,
I mean, would one presume that maybe the other 75% will coalesce?
Well, yeah, I mean, she came very close first. It's going to be a very tight race for mayor, at least from the primary.
Frank and Rick, there is one interesting tidbit as a sidebar to this, because when I was on these stories covering them ad nauseum, I asked, why can't the residents simply vote these leaders out? I mean, they've been citing 3 decades of mismanagement and neglect. And they said, look, when you've got 12% voter turnout in a very underserved minority community, it just ain't going to happen. And that was the problem. They could not get anything done save for the recall.
Well, Lindsey, a lot of times in these small towns, people have livings. They have lives. Their life doesn't revolve around sitting in council meetings. They're trying to provide for their kids and stuff, and they're assuming that the leaders are looking out for them.
Right, exactly. That's what they're hoping. And of course, in a case like this, when you do talk to residents who live there, they say, look, we've not only gone into bankruptcy, but crime has risen. We've had businesses move out. What kind of life is this for my family? And they are extremely angry, and that is why the recall election happened and why the outcome was what it was. And when you talk about the woman who's running for mayor, it's very interesting because you have people who are trying to save face as well. You have council members saying, look, I know things are bad, things did get worse under my watch, but I was the one person saying we shouldn't have done it that way, and that's exactly the platform that she's running on. She's saying, look, I was the only naysayer. I was the only one saying we shouldn't. I was going the other direction. So if she can run on that type of platform, she might have a chance.
And it does seem like some of these folks, certainly the person organizing this effort, is not aligned with the old guard politicians, not aligned with the unions either. In fact, if I understand correctly, the public employee unions opposed these recall efforts. So maybe we're going to see some interesting things happening in San Bernardino. All right, David, I know you love to talk about the streets of LA, and the new mayor, Eric Garcetti, has come up with a program called Great Streets, which is to maybe take some of his West Side magic and some of the stuff that has worked in the boulevards there and beautify and turn, other places in LA into the Champs-Élysées. So tell us about that.
It just seems that Mayor Garcetti is trying to clean up the city, trying to make it a safe city, trying to create jobs. In theory, great program. In execution, I think it's going to be terrible. Any Angelino like myself who drives on Wilshire and Olympic and Pico and Sepulveda and Sawtelle, it's like you're four-wheel driving these craters and crevices in the road. Fix the darn infrastructure, forget about beautifying, forget about the trees, forget about the benches, and get the streets repaired. Now, what he is doing and what's smart is he wants to streamline the process. In years past, the Department of Transportation would not be coordinating with, say, the city engineering department or other departments that fix the roads. So one day you're repaving, one day you're blacktopping, one day you're putting pipes underneath the street. No one knew what the heck was going on, and we as motorists are sitting there pulling our hair out. I just want to get from point A to point B. I don't care how the street looks if there's some trees or benches. I think the problem is he's too concerned with the beautification, which which eventually we might need if there's more money in the city coffers. But for now, simply fix the infrastructure of the roads, because I mean, it is awful. LA has some of the worst streets in the country.
Frank, I hear David, and I suspect I'll hear it from you other Angelinos here, that just fix the darn potholes.
Well, you've seen how much hair I pulled out. Yeah, it's frustrating. And I live near downtown in a section of the city called Silver Lake, where some of the roads, the worst roads in the city, are. And so it's been very frustrating. At the same time, as City Councilman, now Mayor Eric Garcetti, did some interesting things in the Silver Lake area. He happened to be my councilman too, where they would build wider sidewalks and put in some greenscape and some really nifty areas that look great now. And so maybe a little bit of money kind of goes a long way. To fix roads, it costs a lot of money.
And that's one part of this plan I don't think there was much talk about is the money. Lindsey, where's the money going to come from?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows where the money's going to come from for this project. There's some speculation about which departments it might be drawn from, but there has not been any part of his plan put out yet that says this is how we're going to pay for it. And they want to focus on 20 different streets. How about 200 different streets? I think that's how people in LA feel. How about we focus on about 200 of them, not only fixing the potholes, but what about left-hand turn lanes? I mean, you cannot drive through the city without breaking the law to get from point A to point B. It is almost impossible unless you can, unless you have a very interesting commute. But I can't get home without breaking the law.
I'm a little less cynical. I think beautifying a few streets, as he did in his 13th council district, may work because you may be able to spend a little bit of money. But the money question is a big one, and one of the big questions going forward is whether or not the city will put up a $3 billion bond to really fix streets, which is something they'll consider.
Finally, just a couple minutes left. Lindsey, tell us about USC and the LA Times coming out with their latest polls, and they found out they had some interesting data on our governor, Jerry Brown.
That's right. So our governor apparently is a pretty likable guy. His approval rating is over 50%, but it doesn't
and going
mean
up. I mean,
it's going up. I believe it's 55%, which they say is the highest it's been since he's taken office in 2011. Now, what's interesting about this is that only about a third of voters say they would actually vote for him. So they like the guy.
For re-election.
Right. They like the guy, but they're not sure if they're going to vote him back into office. Now, here's the bottom line about this poll, though. Voters said that if he was running against a Republican, he's pretty much a shoo-in. And
I think he probably will be running against. It sounds to me like he's pretty much a shoo-in.
That's right. Well, right now there's one.
Nothing like a Republican to take you from 33% up to 65%, right?
There is one Republican so far that we know of that is running against him, and he's a Republican who used to be part of the Tea Party, who used to be part of
Sounds like 65% for Jerry Brown to me.
Minuteman Group, right? So, and this is a guy where if you're looking at both candidates, you have someone who's been governor for a very long time versus someone who wants to be governor, who last year had an incident bringing a loaded gun to LAX. People can't forget that.
A bold prediction. Jerry Brown will be re-elected governor next year.
Okay, and David, any chance he's going to decide to run for president again? What do you think?
He's not going to run for president, but the one sidebar to this issue in the poll is that folks your age, the 65-year-old blue hairs, they're loving him who go for their early bird special.
Are you calling me out? First
yes,
of all,
I am.
I'm going to have to issue a denial. I'm going to have to deny the 65-year-old comment. But anyway, but what did they find?
They found that he's a rock star among older folks, and they are probably going to be the ones that are going to propel him into office, and he's certainly going to run for a second term for governor.
And proof that older folks like us can do the job. All right, thank you, David. You can watch this show and past shows at rickreef.com. Segments of the show can also be viewed at pbssocal.org. My guests have been Frank Stoltze, Lindsey Mastis, and David Nazar. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on SoCal Insider.
SoCal Insider with Rick Reef is brought to you by the following. 5 Point Communities is a proud sponsor of PBS SoCal. 5 Point Communities is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. More information available at www.fivepointcommunities.com. Snell & Wilmer is a full-service business law firm with more than 400 attorneys in Orange County, Los Angeles, and throughout the West. On the web at swlaw.com. Snell & Wilmer. Straight talk, sound counsel. Practical solutions.
Relief Pod's latest generation of safety kits now go everywhere you go. Relief Pod's organized, color-coded, and compact safety kits keep first aid and emergency items accessible for a safe lifestyle every day. Relief Pod. Live ready.
A healthy future for you, your family, and your business is why Memorial Care Health System transformed healthcare. Our hospitals, physicians, and outpatient centers keep patients healthy and care for them when they're not. Memorial Care, one healthcare system leading the way.
Almost everyone in America knows someone who's suffering from Alzheimer's. At UC Irvine, we're discovering new treatments for this devastating disease.